There we go. Thank you for joining me in this presentation and participating in a review of the FY24 budget as well as millage rate. We'll start with the budget presentation. Just a reminder, this budget that we are looking at today for FY24 will begin July 1st, 2023. It will end June 30th, 2024. And the budget that we are reviewing is just the general fund. It does not include capital projects, debt service, any local principal accounts, or school food, as well as no federal programs are included in this budget. We'll take a look at budgeted expenditures first, then budgeted revenues, other sources, and then what our next steps are. In looking at budgeted expenditures, we're going to look at what our guiding principles were for this budget. Then we'll take a look at the baseline budget, any initiatives for the upcoming year, and then the budget by function. In developing our guiding principles, we did a survey of employees, principals, and district leadership where we asked them to prioritize initiatives for this upcoming year. The initiatives included reading proficiency, compensation for teachers, additional compensation for lowest paid employees, a matching retirement plan for our PSERS staff, which are the custodians, bus drivers, and school nutrition staff, increase in safety and security, increase in professional development, or an increase in the budgets for social workers, counselors, and student support staff. We also included 2 open-ended questions. Where would you like to see less money spent? What other feedback do you have as we begin this budgeting process? From that survey, we had a very large percentage who wanted to focus our initiatives on increasing reading proficiency. Another increase that they felt we needed to look at was for social workers, counselors, and the student support staff area. In addition, adding compensation for effective teachers and the lowest paid employees was high on the list of initiatives. We start the budget with our baseline. This is the baseline budget that we need in order to operate for FY24 without including any additional initiatives. So we start with this budget, and then we look at what initiatives are new for FY24. The first initiative comes from the state. This is a mandated initiative that we don't have a choice. This one gets pushed down to us. But the employer cost, what it costs Clark County Schools to pay for the health insurance for its employees, the employer share, has been $945 per employee per month. That rate for certified staff is going up to $1,580 per employee per month. That estimated total is $8.7 million in the FY24 budget, just that increase in the employer cost. Additionally, classified staff will see an increase to $1,195 in FY24. And you'll notice that classified employees will see a step increase for the next 3 years until they get to the same $1,580. So for the FY24 budget, the impact for the classified increase is $900,000, totaling $9.6 million in this state initiative for the increase in the employer cost of the state health benefit plan. The closure of the GNETS facility required us to have to take those students back in-house, which meant that we needed to hire 4 new teachers, 8 additional parapros, as well as space for those students. The state also has an initiative to increase the certified pay scale an additional $2,000. They also wanted to give a 5.1% increase for nutrition workers, bus drivers, and custodians. The $2,000 raise to the salary scale for teachers came to about $3.3 million. The initiative for classified employees came to about $750,000. But you'll see on this slide a local initiative that CCSD has is to actually extend that same $2,000 pay increase to all employees, not just certified pay scales, but to actually extend that to certified and classified, which would be $1.8 million. Additionally, a $2,000 cost of living adjustment for all staff, for both certified and classified staff, totaling $5.3 million. We are implementing a new retirement plan employer match for those PSERS employees. They currently are not able to contribute to the TRS, the teacher retirement system. They're on a separate retirement system that's not nearly as robust. So we want to make sure that those employees are also receiving the same opportunity to save for retirement. This group of employees is your custodians, your bus drivers, and your school nutrition workers. So we would match any contribution up to 6% that they contribute to their retirement plan. Another initiative is to extend the certified salary scale an additional 2 steps, which would end the scale now at 25 years. Currently, the state scale ends at 21 plus years. So when a teacher reaches 21 years of service, they're at the very end of the scale. Locally, we would extend that scale to 25 years. Another local initiative is a deferred maintenance plan. We would actually implement a maintenance plan using some general fund dollars and take that $1 million and put into a proactive plan for maintenance issues. And then finally, the school renaming is a $100,000 project. If we take those state initiatives and our local initiatives, the total comes to $22,282,298. You'll notice that of the $22 million, $13 million of that is solely due to state initiatives that we as a local system don't have a choice but to implement. When we flip to the revenue side, we have 3 main sources of revenue. We have our QBE, our Quality Basic Education state allocation. We have the local property tax, and then we have other local sources of revenue. If we look at the state source first, our QBE allocation for this year is $80,426,000, which is an increase over last year, but you'll see on the next slide that increase is mostly due to the additional costs in health insurance. Our enrollment from 22 to 23 actually dropped slightly, about 2.19%, and our FY24 funding is based on that slight drop. FY24, we actually see a slight increase in students, but that will affect next year's funding. Our FY24 allotment from the state is based on that 2% drop in FTE. Our employer contribution remaining 19.98%, the $2,000 increase for the certified positions, the local fair share increase from $23 million to $26 million. This is actually a negative to the formula. This is the money that the state withholds from our formula earnings based on the value of our property taxes. And then finally, that insurance in that increase in the insurance from the state health benefit plan. In comparison to FY23, we are receiving almost $8 million more in state funding, but if you'll notice the second line down, HI, which stands for health insurance, 7.6 million of that is due just to that increase in health insurance for certified staff. If we look at budgeted revenues for other sources, other local sources, we're only seeing a very slight increase of $300,000 overall in those other local source categories. The final pot of money is our property taxes, and we will go into more depth in property taxes when we talk about the millage rate when we get to that presentation. So I'm going to go through these slides quite fast, but we are projecting in our budgeted revenue $121.9 million, and that's based on 14% growth a delinquency estimate, and also the tax commissioner fees that must be collected from that money. Other resources that we have available are CARES 1, CARES 2, and the ARPA grant funds, which were federal programs derived from COVID. These funds are maintained separately. They're not intended to supplant the general fund, but they do help supplement and support it. So we wanted you to be aware of these resources because they have helped. These are the categories that we're able to spend those resources on: our at-risk student populations, remote learning, meals, mental physical health, supplemental learning, facilities and equipment, professional learning, and continuity of core staff and services. So these funds have been available to us since the onset of COVID in 2020. The first series of grants, CARES 1, ended in 2022. CARES 2 will end this September 2023. And then the final group of grants, the ARPA funds, will end in September of 2024. So we will have those resources still available for one more year. In summary, our tentative budget in summary, if we take the original baseline expenses that I showed you on one of the first slides, it's $189 million. We anticipate collecting from the state $80 million, other local revenue sources of $11.7 million, and our property tax levy capacity of $121.9 million. So total revenue would come to $214 million. If we subtract the state initiatives that have been mandated of $13 million, we also subtract out our local initiatives that we would love to have this year of $9 million. That leaves us with a remaining capacity of $2.3 million. Our next steps, we've had the initial board presentation back in April. We've gone through various board input sessions. We've updated our state allotment, our tax digest information with the most recent, latest, greatest numbers. We passed a tentative budget in May. Now we are going through our public hearings and our budget presentations, and we hope to pass an initial budget in June at the June 1st board meeting. And that concludes the budget portion of the presentation, if the board has any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or follow-up comments? Ms. Davis or Mr. Evans or Dr. Hooker?
So again, I don't have any real questions. Again, I will compliment you on pulling this together so quickly. Brian has just recently left us, right? So I think it's a fantastic job to make it look almost like it did last year, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we will flip over to the millage rate hearing. This is where we'll take a little deeper dive into the property tax revenue source. So as a reminder of how we prepare our operating budget, we start with the resources that we need. So the resources, the baseline budget plus those initiatives. We take out what allocation we're going to get from the state, and then what other non-property tax revenues that we will have projected for the upcoming year. And the bottom line that leaves us with is the amount that we need to derive from property taxes. The digest this year for FY24 was tentatively set at 18.8 mills at the board meeting on the 11th. This remains the same millage rate as the 18.8 mills in FY23. Reassessment of property taxes produced an increase of 13.67% with the millage rate at 18.8 mills. So the 14% projection that you'll see in a minute, 13.67 of that was solely due to reassessments, was solely due to increases in property values. So in order to have no increase, the millage rate would have to roll back to a 16.231. Some property owners may see an increase. If your property values increase, then your property taxes will increase, but it will not be due to the board raising the millage rate. It will be due to your property values increasing. Budgeted revenues are based on a $6.7 billion tax digest, net tax digest. And you'll see the blue line is the reassessment of existing properties and the increased value. The orange line is actually new growth. So that's that gap between the 14% in growth and the 13.67 that's attributed to just reassessments. With the millage rate at 18.8 and the value of 1 mil being 6.4 million, school taxes that we would derive from property tax revenue would be $121.9 million, $121,974,293. These assumptions are based on taking the net tax digest, which anticipates a 14% growth, subtracting 1.5% in delinquency, estimated delinquency. We will not collect 100% of the taxes that are levied. We will likely only collect about 98.5% of those. Additionally, 2.5% of our property tax collections goes directly back to the tax commissioner's office. That revenue comes directly out of what we derive from property taxes and goes to the tax commissioner. So we have to back that out of our revenue estimate in order to have a budgeted revenue. Also, there's a homeowner's tax relief credit that came out this year where $18,000 will come off of your assessed value. So we had to take that into consideration as well. This is a 5-year history. It shows year after year for the past 5 years. You'll see the millage rate, 18.8 last year as well as this year. The net digest has increased. It went from 5.7 million in 2022 to 6.7 in 2023. So you will see a net tax dollar increase at the bottom. Although the millage rate is staying the same, we will see a tax dollar increase due to those increases in values. So what are our next steps? Again, we had the initial board presentation in April. We've had input sessions. We've updated the tax digest information as we got those numbers from the tax commissioner's office about the middle end of April. We passed a tentative budget in May. We've had, this will be our second millage rate hearing. We'll have one more millage rate hearing June 1st at 5 o'clock. And then we will set the millage rate at the June 1st board meeting. And that concludes the millage rate presentation if the board has any questions over the millage rate.
Any follow-up questions or conversation?
I don't know if we can answer this, but, and I should have written it down to send to you guys after yesterday. Does this include the net to the school district? That is minus the TAD allocation that went to that fund. Is that correct, or do we still have to subtract that?
Ms. Davis, I'm unsure about that. In
I'll
developing this budget, when Dr. Whitaker wasn't here, but
Right.
Brian Schuneman was, that's something that I can get a response from him very quickly and make sure that we get that out to you before tomorrow.
No worries. Thank you, but do I need this? You got it. I don't need to send an email.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will move to the public comment portion of our hearing. And just a reminder that with public comments, the board policy on public comments can be found in BCBI. I think that's placed up here, aspects of that policy is placed up here, but for the full policy, you can consult BCBI. I'm going to highlight a few things from that policy. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. At this point, those remarks should be concluded. No speaker will indulge in personal attacks, and all comments are to be addressed directly to the board. To protect the privacy of students, speakers shall refrain from identifying specific students by name. No individual or group shall be retaliated against in any manner for speaking during public comment and participation. Personal concerns may be addressed also in writing to the superintendent and the president of the Board of Education. Written copies of those comments will be provided to the full board. At a board meeting, board members will not respond to questions or comments from the public. The district may respond when relevant to public input is needed or appropriate within 10 working days. And then lastly, what I'll highlight is that the use of obscene, profane, vulgar, physically threatening, or abusive remarks will not be allowed. Loud and boisterous conduct or comments by speakers or members of the audience will not be allowed. From my understanding, we do have some community members that have signed up to speak, so at that time, we will transition to that. Our first speaker is Mary Songster.
Thank you, Superintendent and board members. I am hoping to request that the administration share a more detailed analysis of the maintenance and operations of plant budget item, to at least include annual energy costs for the district, energy costs for individual campuses. In addition to energy cost, it would be great to see the fuel cost for transportation and maintenance cost. Does the transportation budget include any replacement buses and things along those lines? This information would be very valuable and give needed insight for upcoming operations and transportation decisions the school board as well as the district will be making in the upcoming year, and greatly inform decisions around the next East Blast in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeb Bradbury.
I spoke yesterday, and I made a mistake because the budget that I had, and anyway, we were in agreement now that the 121,974 is the correct amount. But I still think that the board should consider a full 1 mil rollback. If you take the $2.3 million down at the bottom of change in fund balance, that is just unallocated funds. Up at the top, you've got a $51,909,000 beginning fund balance. I look back on the 2022 budget, and on the budget, it called for, at the end of the year, for $36,500,000. So somehow we've gotten to 51 million in basically 2 years. And I'd love for you to correct me if I'm wrong. But that's where we are. So my point is that the county says you should have about a 20% fund balance, and that leaves you in excess of about $10 million. So I as a homeowner, business owner, taxpayer, am asking y'all to roll your millage rate back at least 1%. You could do more if you need to raise it next year, but when you sat here last year and you didn't roll it back last year, and then you have almost a $3 million fund balance increase, I think you've got that also built into this budget. One other question I have is that you're paying the county 2.5% to collect taxes, and I did the math on that. It's roughly $3.1 million, is that correct? just for your information, Robbie, that's 100% of the budget for the tax commissioner and the tax assessor's office. So you need to go renegotiate that deal. I don't know why we're getting charged 2.5, but that deal needs to be revisited between you and Blaine and the mayor and the commissioner. The other thing that I take exception to, when she said that we only collected 98.5% of our taxes, our tax commissioner, Tony Mehta, is collecting in excess of 99%. If I were budgeting, I would want to budget 98.5, but the fact of the matter is they have continually gone to over 99%, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. John Elliott.
That would be me. Thank y'all for coming. I'm going to continue to come until I maybe present my case to everybody on the school board. But I'd like to add to what Jeb said about the property tax delinquencies. If you think you own your house, just quit paying your taxes and you'll find out the county owns your house and they will sell it and they will collect those dollars. So I'm not sure that I saw where the delinquency collections were shown in the budget. Were they, ma'am? So what did that equal to? Was it 1.5%? Okay. My request to you is to roll the tax millage rate back an amount that is equal to the increase of the tax digest. By that I mean whatever increase that you have, I would like for you to set the millage rate equivalent to a lesser, in order to collect the same amount of money you did last year. I appreciate your time. I wish more of the commissioners were here, but I'll be back. Maybe they'll be here then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your public comments. I think that brings us to the conclusion of the hearing. Our next and last scheduled public hearing is scheduled for next Thursday before the board meeting, so that is at 5 o'clock. And so again, that next meeting, the next hearing is next Thursday, which is the 1st of June at 5 o'clock. Okay? And so that concludes our meeting. Thank you all very much.